is up, fam? It is your boy Sunil. Thank you so much for tapping into So Real Sports Talk. I got my main man over to this side, Casey. Casey, how are you doing today, my friend?
Very good. I'm in Sunil, or I'm very good, Sunil. I'm actually on vacation. I'm up in northern Wisconsin, hanging out with family, but wanted to make sure that we kept this going. So blocked off some time to make sure that we could talk about some tight ends.
I love it. I love it. And we are doing our weekly fantasy football show. And last week we broke down the wide receivers. It was nice. Some sparks flew. This one, maybe not so much sparks because it is the tight ends, but they still are a very important aspect of your fantasy team. So let's start off with that, Casey. How important are the tight ends to your team? What is kind of your strategy around tight ends? Maybe even talk about a little bit about what round you're looking to draft a tight end for your fantasy drafts.
Sure. I actually like going and getting some of the top guys as soon as I can. I think that if you're going to build a championship team, which that's again what we're trying to do, we're trying to win championships, whether it's for bragging rights, trophies, or straight up cash. You want to go win. So I want to go and make sure that I get one of the top guys. Usually in every league that I'm in, I've got one of these guys that I have ranked in the top 4 or 5.
Okay.
And it's just because you want to I'm willing to pay the premium for all of these guys that are at the top of my list. So if I'm drafting a tight end in the first couple of rounds, it's going to be from this kind of top tier guys. Otherwise, then I'm going to fade it. If I'm a guy that's not going to choose to get one of these top guys, I don't want to spend draft capital on a guy that might be, the 7th, 8th, 12th best tight end when I can get wide receivers and backup running backs in that position. There's a handful of guys we'll talk about that don't make the list, and you can grab those guys really late in drafts. So
Right.
me personally, I'm targeting tight ends in the first couple of rounds. Not I shouldn't say first couple, not 1, 2, or 3. But after that, late third round, I don't mind drafting Kittle in the late third round in a redraft league. If you're playing in anything that's tight end premium, where they get a little bit extra, which a lot of leagues are transforming into that. After they've done super flex, they tend to go that way. Then I'm drafting all of these guys within the first 2 rounds. All the top 4 guys, I'm drafting them in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, and I think the way the tight end position is kind of moving towards more athletic receiver, like bigger receiver type guys. I think that the tight end position is going to get a little more up there with just receivers, because sometimes if you have a really athletic tight end, which are some of the names that we're going to be talking about, these are going to be a lot of quarterbacks' go-to guys, and especially with the quarterback room getting younger and younger, I think that tight ends are utilized more by younger QBs as like a safety net. So you can get a really productive tight end. Obviously, there's a top tier of guys that we're going to be discussing. But even if you get them later on the rounds, these could be really big value picks that could be make or break in whether you win a championship or not win a championship based off the consistency of these tight ends. So that's why I think even though it might not be the sexiest position, it's a super important position, especially for fantasy. So let's start out with 9 to 12. So we're doing the top 12 so we can focus on, most leagues are going to be either 10 to 12 teams. So we'll give you at least a tight end one for a 12 league team. So let's list them 12, 11, 10, 9, and then we'll kind of discuss as far as why you place them where you place them.
Sure. All right, starting out at number 12, I have Noah Fant, Denver Broncos. 11, I have Mike Gesicki with the Miami Dolphins. Then I have Rob Gronkowski with Tampa Bay, and Evan Engram with Giants.
Okay, cool. So Noah Fant is somebody who had a pretty decent season last year. If I'm remembering right, he had some injuries which maybe derailed his season a little bit. This is a guy who's one of the prime options in that offense. Unfortunately, he might not have the most consistent quarterback play behind him. But what do you like about a guy like Noah Fant, and why does he make your list?
Yeah. So you kind of brought it up in the intro talking about these tight ends, is that the league is moving towards these athletic guys or inline tight ends where they're not asking them to block that much. Some systems aren't. They're not required to block a whole lot, and they get split out a whole lot as well. So they become much more of a passing threat. And I kind of agree with you. Last year, he had a couple of injuries that derailed him, but I think it was more so the quarterback going down. They were without a decent quarterback for a lot of the season, and he was still fantasy relevant when he was
Mm-hmm.
healthy and he was on the field. You could still play him in your starting lineup and feel just fine. Um, Now they're either going to have Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater throwing the ball around in Denver. Um, I don't think it's really going to matter for Noah Fant as long as he's healthy. Both of those guys have been there and both are in camp. So if one of them gets hurt or they keep doing the flip flop thing with him, I think he's going to hold. He's going to be just fine and hold ground. I'm not sure that I trust Cortland Sutton coming back from his injury yet. I was hyped and I was ready for him to come back. So when I saw this video on Twitter that kind of, got some tread here last week, him coming out of a start and then making a move and trying to catch this ball, he just looked like he was pretty ginger and he was favoring that knee quite a bit. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that Noah Fant is still the number two target in Denver until Portland Sutton really proves that he's back and that he's going to be capable. Um, and that's going to be the case with a lot of these guys in the top 12. Um, they're It's dependent upon who else is on the field, unfortunately, with some of the tight ends and how they're going to get schemed into the game plan. Noah Fant's one of these guys where he's the number two target, he's talented enough and athletic enough, he's automatically in the top 12.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in some games, Noah Fant will actually be the number one option, right? So he is
Yeah,
a weapon for them. He might be on some people's draft boards much higher than 12. I've seen him, in a
sure.
lot of people's top 8. But I like where you're going with it. He definitely is, I think, a tight end one. Has a lot of upside, but I like where you place them because he is still inconsistent until he could string together a full season. There are guys that are a little more consistent than him. We got some Amin the
Yeah.
Dream. What up, Sunil? What up, big boy? Amin, and welcome, Casey.
Hey, I mean,
Who did you have at 11?
11 was Mike Gesicki.
Okay. So this is a little bit interesting because I think, once again, Gesicki is somebody who could be higher on people's lists. He obviously had a pretty decent season in moments last year, but then obviously got derailed by an injury. He went out for the season, right? I think he was out or for a long period of time last season. So what do you like about Gesicki, and what do you expect from him this season?
Yeah. So Gesicki was one of these tight ends that was really hyped coming out of Penn State. So when it came to dynasty drafts, a lot of guys were drafting. If you were in a premium league, you were drafting Gesicki kind of in the second or third round of rookie drafts. But coming back to redraft here, he's in a contract year, and I don't always like playing off of that. But this guy, I think, is athletic enough that he is going to find a job next year. And they drafted Hunter Long, so it doesn't look like that job's going to be in Miami. It looks like they want to go a different route. Gesicki, again, he's more of this inline guy. He does not play on the line of scrimmage and block. He is split out wide, and he's a deep downfield threat for these guys. So I think combined with that, Miami's wide receiver health has been iffy for the last couple of years, and it looks like it's going to continue to be that way. Will Fuller, Preston Williams, and Jalen
They,
Waddle
yeah.
are all a bit nicked up. Yeah, so I think that because of that, Gesicki is just going to kind of rise to the top. He's going to play his heart out, and he's going to play for a contract next year.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that is a little bit of a question mark with Gesicki is a lot of his production last season came with Ryan Fitzmagic at quarterback.
Yeah.
So now with Tua going to be the full-time quarterback there, is he going to be targeted as much as Ryan used him? So I think he has a lot of upside as well. I'm happy with where you place him because there are some question marks as far as quarterback play and what that offense is going to look like under Tua as far as where he distributes the ball. So great. Who was next? Number 10
was Gronk. Next was Gronkowski.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
go ahead.
No, and just I can beat this out quick. Yeah, I think that he's a touchdown machine still. He's a big play guy still, and Brady turns to him in a time of need. So I think having him in the top 10, as long as he stays healthy, they have no other tight ends there that are really proven to be, viable. OJ Howard is coming back after, I think, what was it, broken ankle or Achilles, one of those two, and both of those are going to be hard for him to come back from. And I don't even think I think he's just starting to take some snaps in training camp, and he would be the only threat to take over any time from Gronk. But Gronk proved that he was able to turn the clock back last year, and I just like him in the 10 spot.
Yeah.
With an offense that's going to score a lot of points.
The only thing about Gronk for me is he's really touchdown dependent in most fantasy leagues. Obviously, Tampa Bay has a lot of great receivers there. They have 3 wide receiver ones, in my opinion, with Antonio Brown there as well. But the good thing is Tom Brady likes distributing the ball to everybody. Whomever's open is who he's going to target. I just feel like it's going to be difficult for Gronk to put up the same type of touchdown numbers as he did in New England with Mike Evans there. It seems like even though Tom Brady likes Gronk, I think he likes Mike Evans a little bit more with how, they played there in the red zone. So for me, Gronk is really, really red zone dependent. He's not going to get you a lot of yards. So for me, he didn't even make my top 12, to be honest, just because I think there's better options there. But I can see why he's there. I think he's more of a name than an asset at this point, but we'll see.
I get that. And I think maybe last year we had some time, or he needed some time to actually reacclimate a little bit.
Yeah.
Not to say that he wasn't strong enough or even up to speed, but you guys constantly talk about even the difference between practice and the games. They have to make that adjustment, and maybe he just needed a nice year under his belt. He'll get stronger. I don't know. Again, the touchdown machine. We did talk about Mike Evans last week being, like you said, being the other one that they're going to target down in the red zone. I just think they still are going to score enough points that it doesn't matter that he's going to be viable.
Right. Amin asks, who is better at fantasy football in general, Sunil or Casey? I mean, we've never played each other, but as far as knowledge, it definitely goes to Casey. This guy is well more researched than I am. I have a nice little trophy chest, but I only play in Yahoo leagues. Casey's all over the place, Dynasty leagues, Yahoo, NFL.com. So if you're going to put your money on somebody, I'd put it on Casey.
That's interesting, though. We should probably get into a league together.
We have to
hash that out for real.
Absolutely. So we can have some bragging rights on the show. And then
a little trophy icon right up here.
I love it. And then I guess was Everett next?
Ingram.
Okay.
Everett's
so Pinor actually had a statement.
We could talk about Gerald Everett at some point if we wanted to.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
So Pinor actually thinks Ingram is overrated to him. His rookie season was his best. Hawkinson deserves more credit. I'm sure Hawkinson probably made your list somewhere, but let's talk about Ingram.
We gotta wait to talk about it.
Right. So let's talk about Ingram. He's been one of these players that has been like the future of the tight end because a lot of people are high on him as far as media. He's that next generation of athletic tight end. He showed some flashes last season for the Giants, but I think overall has been pretty disappointing as far as just fantasy wise. He tends to be really inconsistent. You never know what you're really going to get from him, which is for me one of those tough guys that you draft that just 1 week might give you something, the next week might not give you anything. But he made it, in the top 11 of your top 10 of your list. So why did you place him where you placed him, and what do you expect out of him this season?
Sure. I like some of these tight ends that have the really high draft capital. It sometimes takes them a couple of They're still these really crazy athletic freaks in some way, but it takes them a few years. Jared Cook is somebody that didn't make this list, but he's still a very viable tight end, and maybe not for fantasy, but he's an NFL tight end that gets
Mhm.
the job done. Jared Cook, Eric Ebron, these guys still have jobs. Mercedes Lewis even still has a job up in Green Bay, and he's more of in a mentoring position now, but he's on the field at times. And I think Evan Ingram kind of fits a little bit of that mold. He might not ever be the top 3 or 5 guy that we really wanted him to be, but I think he can be a perennial top 12 tight end one for fantasy league teams. Um, a lot with him is going to depend on the system that he's in and the players around him. I think Kenny Galladay's injury, while they're saying now it's not going to be that big of a deal, he's tweaked the hamstring in preseason already. So Kenny Galladay, the wide receiver that they brought in to be their wide receiver one and to be their number one leader in targets, may not be that guy anymore. And Evan Engram led their team in targets last year. So even if he's number 2 behind Galladay still, I think I'm gonna take that, especially with this guy's athletic capabilities in high draft capital.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely can be great upside. Once again, you're trusting a quarterback that a lot of people don't trust in a system that a lot of people don't trust. I mean, I don't know what's going on with the Giants. Reports just that there was an all-out brawl in practice, offense versus defense. So we'll see. They're definitely on edge out there. So we'll see if that leads to actual production or if they're just going to implode.
That stuff sometimes brings the team right together really fast, and they need that shaken out of them. I don't know. I think New York can be. I don't think they're going to win their division or anything like that. But they have some fantasy options there that are available. And I don't. Jason Garrett was the head coach with Jason Witten, and now he's the offensive coordinator there in New York. Maybe
how do you feel like a guy like Kyle Rudolph, who they brought into the Giants this season, who has been a premium tight end in the past? How do you think he was going to affect Ingram's game?
I think that pushes Ingram outside. So there's some of these guys that we've already talked about, Gesicki, that is going to essentially just play outside the whole time. Fant a little bit less; he can block the more. But eventually, you get to guys like Kittle, or even mentioning before Jared Cook and Eric Ebron, where they're going to be on the field all the time. Ingram and Gesicki are going to be tight ends that are not on the field all the time. When they're on the field, it's because they're passing the ball. And because of their athletic ability, I think they get the ball passed to them. They get targeted. They get game planned and scripted into what's happening. So, Kyle Rudolph is definitely going to take away some snaps from Ingram, but I don't think that he takes away any targets. Not any that are like substantial.
Yeah, I feel like Rudolph is going to be more of their blocking tight end. That's going to be doing most of the rundowns. But when it comes to passing,
and even a mentor to come in and just teach Ingram. Ingram's young enough that they can still turn this around and make him that top 5 guy if they can shake something loose. Otherwise, he is where he is.
Now I know you were talking about you tiered these guys off. So this 9 to 12 in a draft, where are you looking to pick up these type of guys as far as round wise?
Yeah, so these guys. In a redraft league, I'm probably waiting to draft these guys until I have my starting lineup, until I have 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and that quarterback picked out. Then I'm going to pick up the tight end at this tier. So you're talking rounds 5, 6, 7, 8.
Makes sense. And I mean, these are guys that I agree with where they're tiered. These are guys that have some upside, but they're going to give you some heartbreakers every now and then, as far as there's going to be games where they give you 1 or 2 points, to be honest, where, it could be kind of that difference between win. There could be a reason why you blow a team out because they have a big game. They could also be a reason why a team that you're favored in. A lot of these type of guys are going to play underneath where they're projected to play, I would say.
Yeah, and so week to week with tight end is really hard to, unless you're the top guys, it's really hard to gauge. So that's like, if you're really trying to win right now, then you go and target those guys early enough.
For sure. Well, let's move on. So 5 to 8. Let's list this next tier of tight end for you, and then we'll break them down.
Sure. And just to be clear, like my first tier break was actually right between Gronkowski and Engram. So the Fant, Gesicki, and Gronk were kind of in my tier four, and then my
Okay.
next tier was just two players. It was Engram, and then it was Robert Tonyan, who's at number
Okay.
8. But to list off 5 through 8, I have Robert Tonyan at 8, Mark Andrews at 7, Logan Thomas at 6, and Kyle Pitts at 5.
Who was 5?
Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitt. Ooh, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so Tunyon at 8.
Yep.
Tunyon is somebody who's very interesting. Now that Aaron Rodgers is back, you're gonna get full value out of Tunyon, right? Because Aaron Rodgers there being a quarterback makes all of these guys from Green Bay viable again. If he
Tonyan
wasn't
doesn't
there,
make this list without Rodgers.
right? Exactly. But a lot of people have him higher because of how much Aaron Rodgers actually throws to him. Tunyon had a breakthrough season last season. He really hadn't been on anybody's radar. I think he was one of those steals last season that you got way more out of. He might have even been a waiver wire type guy where he wasn't drafted in anybody's league, and they saw how he was performing and picked him up if you were lucky, if he was still available. But you have him, at 8, which is, I guess when we're looking at 12 guys, we're looking at bottom 12, then top 12. Why do you have him where you have him, and what do you expect out of him? Being a Green Bay fan, knowing everything that you can know about, a guy like Tunyon.
Yeah. So like I said, if Rodgers isn't back, he doesn't make this list. He's probably just sitting on the outside because with tight ends, if you can find one that has put up a tight end one season, like you keep him, or you make sure you remember that and you target him later on.
Mm-hmm.
But Rodgers being back, he also trains with George Kittle, and so I think
Yes.
that's pretty interesting. And like you said, he had a breakout last year, and it sounds like all reports out of his personal camps and the George Kittle workouts, and I think that he was part of the tight end university this summer. And then the reports right now in training camp, like all wheels are up, man. There's so many mouths to feed, and that's such a cliche for fantasy football right now because there's a lot of teams that have talent all around. They have 2 wide receivers, maybe a third one, and a running back that all catch passes. How are you supposed to find this tight end? But Aaron Rodgers likes to target them, and when he has one that he trusts, he will keep going back to him. So I like him at the 8 spot.
I mean, Tunyon is somebody who it seems like Aaron Rodgers targets, especially end zone, which is really important. I am interested to see them bringing back Randall Cobb to be that slot position. I wonder how that's going to affect how many targets Tunyon gets. Good thing about Aaron Rodgers is he likes to distribute the ball. They do throw the ball a lot. So I think there's going to be enough targets out there for everybody. But this could be a position where maybe Tunyon loses some extra targets that he was getting last season because the wide receiver core was so bleak. So they were actually throwing to Tunyon a lot more, right? But obviously Adams is there back. He's in a contract year. Their number 2. I don't know who exactly is going to be their number 2. If it's going to be Scantling or if it's going to be Lazard, but they both should be healthy. Cobb is going to be there. So does this mean that Tunyon might drop or might not perform the same way he did last season? Yet to be seen. So I guess I can understand why he's at 8 because he is another guy who could be kind of like a heartbreaker. Maybe people draft him a little bit higher based off of what he did last season, but he might not be able to replicate just because of how Green Bay's made up right now.
Sure. And I see Tunyon as a guy. You might draft him, and in the first 5 weeks, just be pissed that you can't play him or he's not scoring you any points. But the way that the NFL goes, and the way that the Packers play, they could definitely lose a wide receiver or 2. They could lose some guys that are actually out there to catch balls, and then he rises and he fits right back into that position again. A lot of this sometimes is balance. You want to find the balance between an offense that you just know is going to put up lots of points, and then find out where there's targets available. Find out when those targets are going to be available. Same thing when you get to these running backs. A lot of times we like these. There's these rookie running backs that just come into the league and they win people fantasy championships every year because they take 5 to 6 weeks to get rolling. Then they win the starting position, and then they put up 20 points for like the last 5 weeks of the season. Put up 20 points every week, and they win people championships. And they're rookie running backs. So I think there's a good balance that you got to find there. Tanyan, like I said, he's in a great position. I like that he trains with Kittle. So.
Yeah, but training with Kittle means that you're gonna be a block first type tight end. So
yeah, I mean, there's good and bad with that. If you are a block first tight end, it means that you're on the field all the time.
Right.
No matter
which
what.
is a good thing. That means, especially with the offensive mind like they have over there and their coach, that could mean that he could be drawn up in certain plays that they might target him. So, yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that I think is going to be week to week heartbreaker, and then you're going to be cheering him on. He'll be somebody who's just kind of like that. So you got to kind of start him because of what his potential is. But once again, he's somebody who might underperform his projected, like we talked about the last year. Okay, who do you have next? Who's at 7?
Mark Andrews. Yep, Mark Andrews, Baltimore.
Okay, so I mean, once again, this is somebody who might be a little bit higher on other people's list just because he's Lamar Jackson's favorite target whenever Lamar Jackson does throw, right? But you have him at 7. What do you expect out of him this season?
Sure. I like the wide receivers that they've brought in. Everybody likes Rashad Bateman, and I think he becomes the number 1 target as he probably should. But he's probably the only competition for Mark Andrews. Like you said, I have it written down here that he's Lamar's security blanket. Whenever something is going wrong, there's Mark Andrews, and the ball is dumped off to him, which is going to hurt running back situations when we talk about J.K. Dobbins later on. But he likes to use Andrews in that way. I also like Tylan Wallace. He's a rookie out of Oklahoma State that Baltimore brought in. But he's more of a deep ball, a deep threat, might even just be returning kicks and that kind of thing. So Mark Andrews remains a number 2. And if you are on a prolific offense and you're the number 2 guy, and you're actually in the tight end position, you're going to be in the top tight end.
For sure. So this is definitely one guy that could be, in the top 5. I would say, just because of the amount of targets that he gets. He's I think he's been I think maybe last season he might have been in the top 5 as far as points, if I'm not mistaken. He's a guy who could get multiple touchdown games. But I think he had some injuries last season, why he had some up and down games. But if he's healthy for a full season and you could get him as the 7th tight end off the board, I think you're getting a steal because he could play like one of those top tier tight ends or produce at least in fantasy because of just how much Lamar Jackson looks his way when he is passing.
Yeah, and he does have a few. I think he's diabetic, so he has some health issues. So there's other things that he has to pay attention to just to make sure that he stays on the field. So not that really knocks him down a whole lot. Not because I don't like that, but it's kind of one of those things just comparing a guy that plays 15 games or 12 games to a guy that plays all 17, you got to take that into consideration.
For sure. Especially if they're not playing deep into the playoffs where you're actually going to need a tight end, right? Who's next? Who's at 6?
Logan Thomas I have at 6.
Okay. So this is a guy who came on strong last season, right?
Yeah.
So he was one of the top tight ends. I know I picked him up on waivers. He was undrafted in every single one of my leagues, and I was able to pick him up when he came on halfway through. He had some inconsistent quarterback play last season. I think that's going to change with Ryan Fitzpatrick as probably the starter there. The coach over there in Rivera likes utilizing tight ends. He used the tight end a lot in Carolina. He had Olsen there, who was utilized a lot. Logan Thomas is one of those athletic type receiving tight ends. So I imagine he's going to have a big season this year, and he's probably going to be highly targeted in most people's drafts. You put him at 6?
Yep.
So tell us what you expect out of him this season.
I mean, you kind of hit all those points. Patrick's arrival is, I think, is going to be great for him. We talked about Gasecki and how Fitz like to target him, and I think that translates, or that transitions right over there in Washington. He's the number two, maybe three, third target on the team. Terry McLaurin is there, and it kind of depends on what they really want to do with Antonio Gibson.
Hmm.
And I think Dynamic Brown is actually going to be
Right.
a really good third option for Washington. But I think Fitz is going to lead on Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas is a former quarterback who made that transition last year, like you said, and with inconsistent quarterback play at the beginning of the year, um, after they settled into a groove in tight end premium. I know it's tight end premium leagues, but he finished with 7 straight double-digit fantasy scoring weeks in tight end premium leagues. So there was probably a lot of leagues out there that Logan Thomas was the difference in one use of games, one use in
Right.
playoff games. Having a guy like that perform at that point in the season makes you able to beat a team that has Kelsey or has Kittle, has somebody that's just really that always balls out. You tend to always see those guys in the finals. Like, oh, the guy that has Kelsey, oh, the girl that has Kittle or Waller. You have a top three tight end, I'm going to see you in the finals. But if you can find a guy like Logan Thomas that gets down that hot streak, Robert Tanyan is the one we talked about just a little bit ago. I think those are two guys that could finish the season really strong for you and actually make you compete with the team that has a tight end that they really went and drafted somebody early. You want to wait? I wouldn't wait past those guys.
Got you. I mean, I totally agree. I think, you know, where you put him is kind of where you have to put him based off of who's ahead of him that you're going to talk about. But he's
Yeah,
definitely somebody that could move into that top five, or at least perform at that level. But he'll probably still be there in the middle to late rounds as well because he's not necessarily considered those top tight ends that goes in
yeah,
the first, second, third rounds. So number 5 is going to be extremely interesting because this is complete projection, right? We've never seen this guy
yeah,
take an NFL snap, but you put Kyle Pitts at 5. I've
yeah,
seen him in the top 4 in some people's drafts.
yeah,
So this is
yeah.
the most, I guess, talked about. This is the most interesting person because he's projected to be one of these elite tight ends, but we've never seen him play. So you place him at 5. Tell me why and tell me what you expect from him.
Sure. I There's just something about it. I could not put him over the other four that are on this
Uh-huh.
list. And at this point, everybody knows who the other four are. And I'd like to think everybody agrees with me. You just can't. I can't put this guy above him. Not in a redraft league. Not in something that like you said, we haven't seen him play yet.
Uh-huh.
I play in my home dynasty league. We play Superflex, tight end premium, and our rookie draft this year went Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Kyle Pitts. He was the third pick off the board before all other wide receivers, all other running backs, and the rest of those quarterbacks. The hype for this guy is real. They traded Julio away. They traded
Right.
Julio Jones, and this is going to be his replacement. He's an athletic freak. He's automatically the number two target on the team. He's going to run Julio's routes. He's a tight end, but he's going to run Julio's routes.
Right.
And you might as well draft him and play him at tight end right now because when contract time comes around, when he gets to resign, he's going to resign as a wide receiver.
Right.
There's no way he's going to want to make tight end money after this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Atlanta uses their tight end pretty frequently as well, right?
Yeah.
They used to have like premium. I think it was Hunter. Was it Hunter Henry? Who was their tight end before?
Yeah, Henry's still there. In fact, he's going to be a great guy for him to learn from. But
Is
Tony Gonzalez,
Henry still there? I thought Henry left.
not
Yeah, I'm skipping on the name
Hunter
too,
Henry
but
is the Charger guy. It's the Baltimore Ravens guy. They traded for the Baltimore Ravens guy from last year.
yeah,
I'm
the
blanking
name
on
is
his name.
slipping blanking. But I agree with you.
Austin
I think
Hooper, Tony Gonzalez.
yeah, that's
They've
who I
had
was.
productive.
So
Tight
they've
ends.
had productive. Austin Hooper was the name that I was thinking of that went to Cleveland. So I think that he's primed to get a lot of targets. I think that they're expecting. Look, Atlanta is looking for the QB of their future, and they decided to pass up on some pretty good quarterbacks that they could have gotten to pick this guy up because they feel he's just going to be that good. And a lot of people, I know I'm tapped into the 49ers nation and all this kind of stuff. When the 49ers moved up to trade 2 first-round picks to go up to pick number 3, there was maybe not a large, but there was a very vocal group of people that were saying, pick Pitts at 3, and then somehow trade back up to pick your quarterback, which is saying a lot because a lot of people are really high on this guy. They think he's a future Hall of Famer without even taking a snap. So it's going to be high risk, high reward. Picking a rookie so high off the board, I think it's going to be interesting because maybe some guys are going to take him a lot higher just because of the hype around him. So it may give you an opportunity later, if you're one of the later picks, to get maybe some guy that is in your top 4 later, because he might be one of the top 3 tight ends taken off the board just because of the hype around him. But I
wouldn't be surprised if he's the second or third tight end drafted in a lot of leagues. I mean, if you're in a redraft league and you see Kyle Pitts go immediately after Travis Kelce is drafted, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked, and I would tell you to immediately buy the next tight end because everyone else is going to see that.
Right, and it could be a good pick. It might be.
It could be it could be the right pick. It could be correct. It's not saying that that's wrong.
That's what's crazy, and that's what's exciting about the draft is, he's somebody who might even outperform. He might be the number 1 tight end at the end of the season with, because he's not going to a bad team in the sense Atlanta is bad as far as record, but as far as the productivity of that offense, they put up points. They just can't stop anybody. So they are going to throw the ball a lot. Their running game is a little bit suspect. So Ridley and Pitts are going to get a lot of attempts, a lot of throws to them. So he could be the number 1 tight end at the end of the day, and you have him at 5 because we don't know. So he's probably the most exciting pick. If he drops to 5, I'm probably picking him up just because of that upside that you have.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I mean, if you pick, I'd take him in the 4th round, beginning of the 4th round.
Yeah, that's crazy to say.
Sit there and wait. Yeah, just sit there and wait and let Kelce go first. Let somebody, let a couple other guys go. And then as soon as those tight ends are picked up, this guy's just going to sit there.
He could be better than them all, right? He could outperform all of them, which is incredible, right? Cool. Oh, and before we move into the top tier, so let's talk a little bit because you talked about that tier where you're going 5th round and below, and then you had the tier just right above that. These guys that were 5 to 8. Where are you taking them in your draft?
Sure. So I think I broke off. I broke off after Mark Andrews and Tanyan. That was the other break, right? So I had Tanyan and Ingram in my 3rd tier, and this 2nd tier is basically everybody else: Mark Andrews, Logan Thomas, Kyle Pitts, and then also my number 4 guy are all in the same tier. My tier number 2, and in tier number 2, to be honest, maybe I should have tiered it off again, but I'm taking Hockenson and Kyle Pitts. I'm taking those guys probably in rounds 4 and 5. I would be more than willing to just go out and get, one running back or, one running back and one wide receiver each, double up on one of them. If you really want a quarterback that's available. I haven't played in just single quarterback leagues in a while, so it's different. I have to go back to that. But I would, pairing up, if you're able to go Nick Chubb, DeAndre Hopkins, and then get Aaron Rodgers and TJ Hockenson in your 4th round, I think that's a great way to start. You have all 4 starters filled up, and then you just, right after TJ Hockenson, I would pile in the running backs, as many running backs as I could, and then I'd fill in with wide receivers and then the backups to the other positions that I wanted. So I would go with Hockenson and Pitts. I'd be comfortable taking them right there at round 4 and 5.
Got you. So you kind of hinted at who's number 4 on your list. So
I did, yeah. I was trying to hide it earlier, then just had to talk about it. Yeah, TJ
so
Hockenson
we got
is
Hockenson
number
at 4, and then let me guess, Waller at 3.
Yep.
Kittle at 2.
Yep.
And then Kelsey, however way we were pronouncing it, at 1. Got that right? Okay.
Yeah, you did.
So let's talk about it. So Hockenson, obviously somebody who has a lot of upside. To me, he's been pretty disappointing as a tight end as far as fantasy. He's getting a new quarterback in the guy from the Rams, Jared Goff. Jared Goff hasn't been tight end friendly, I would say, in fantasy. You know, the Rams tight ends never really performed that well, but they did have a lot of receivers there. Detroit doesn't have that same thing where they have a lot of receivers. So tell us why you put Hockenson so high. This might be somebody who I think might be rated a little bit higher than other people's lists, but you have him in your top 4. Why, and what do you expect out of him this season?
Sure. You know, he's kind of a blend of a couple other arguments that I've had for other people. Like Engram, he's got the high draft capital. Noah Fant, he got this high draft capital, where first-round picks in the NFL, first-round picks, they don't miss as often as we like to think. There are a lot more like outside circumstances that come in that mess these things up, right? And in Hawkinson's case, it still could definitely get messed up. I mean, he's sitting in Detroit. If Jared Goff is not the guy, which he probably is, and if Detroit continues down the same path, he's probably going to end up being one of those guys. But I like that he's on this Detroit team as Jared Goff is there, because I don't think that they're wanting Jared Goff to really go out there and win them any games. Mm-hmm. They're going to lean on other aspects of this offense to win games, and I think that Hockenson is probably going to be their number 1 target. They have Tyrell Williams that they brought in from Oakland, and they drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I think St. Brown can really be something in this league. He might be like your next Jarvis Landry type guy. It'll be really fun to see what he can actually do. But Hockenson is going to be their number 1 target. And he's going to be the safety valve out of the backfield with DeAndre Swift. I think Swift gets schemed and game planned more into what they're going to do, but Hockenson is too talented to not be part of what they're going to do. I think.
Yeah,
I don't think the team performs that well, and then it's going to lead to a high draft pick. A good quarterback comes in there next year.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like this is the argument that people kind of talk themselves into picking Hockenson every single year. You know, you expect that he's going to be, one of the top performers, and we just haven't seen it out of him. Clearly, the arguments you make.
I think he's tight end 1 last year. Again, it's not hard to be a tight end 1.
Right. I mean, I think he's a tight end 1, but what I'm talking about as far as is this guy going to consistently win? So when I look at tight end, I'm looking for somebody that's going to play over their projection as consistent as possible, right? And Hockenson is somebody who always has a pretty high projection for tight ends. And unfortunately, a lot of times he's playing underneath that because of, the height. So, however, I think that a lot of the arguments you make a lot of sense. I think I would take a guy like Pitts over Hockenson.
I get it.
Just because of the upside. I actually might take a guy like Tonyan over Hockenson just because I trust the quarterback more, and I think he's going to get a lot more targets. I'm not as high on Hockenson as you are. I think if it plays out exactly like you said, which is the logical way, I think that he should be bona fide top 4 tight end, but I think a lot of people are going to get their heart broken if they're picking him this high.
Sure. And maybe I thought I did a pretty good job this week better than last week, but maybe this is the one pick that Dynasty just leaned on me too much. I know last week there was probably a couple of guys that
Uh-huh.
just the rookie and sophomore hype and love that I have for some of these guys, and maybe that's still the same for him. Year 3 or year 4 for him though, a little bit older. So
Yeah.
I mean, if he's gonna have a breakout, we should be expecting it relatively soon.
Right. Another guy, I think like a guy like Logan Thomas, I think I would rather have him on my team than Hawkinson based off the value, right? So Hawkinson,
Yeah.
he might come off the board. This is somebody who I think in draft leagues, if there's a run on tight ends and people see Hawkinson, they're like, oh, he's there. I might take the best player available over Hawkinson because there's guys like Logan Thomas, Tunyon, that probably will perform at the same level that you could get deeper in your league. And I think the receiver you take in the same round as Hawkinson or the running back you take it at the same round as Hawkinson is going to help you win more than taking Hawkinson at that same round.
Sure, I can get that. It'd be interesting to see like where that would line up with some of the other guys on my list or on your list, because a lot of people like to draft at the bottom of their tier. So you say, I'm going to get this tier 1 tight end, but I'm not going to pay Kelsey, Kittle, Waller price. I'm just going to pay Hawkinson price. I'm going to get the next, I'm going to get the best running back that I can out of this tier, but I'm not going to pay the price for Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, whatever. I'm going to get the guy at the very bottom of that tier, like Derrick Henry, where it's still tier 1. I'm probably going to get the, I'm probably going to get the production that I'm looking for. I just don't have to pay the same price.
Right. I agree. All right. And then at 3, we had Waller. And these 3 we're talking nitpicking at this level because
shake them up
because you were talking about high production out of these 3 tight ends. Waller broke out last season. No reason to believe he's not going to have the same type of production this season. So tell me about Waller. Tell me what you expect out of him, and let's talk about where you would draft a guy like Waller too.
Sure. Waller is kind of, like I just said with Hawkinson, he's kind of one of those guys that I would draft at the bottom of the, if I was drafting at the bottom of tiers, he would be perfect. You'd let everybody go chase down Kelsey and Kittle. Although, there's a lot of guys that like Waller more than Kittle. They're just scared of Kittle's injury history. And I don't blame them. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But Waller's this, the crazy hybrid, this hybrid inline guy that switches positions, beefs up just like he's supposed to, but seems to not lose any of his speed, and then learns how to block also, so he's not leaving the field. It's an awesome story. It's cool to see the guy pull it off. He's the number 1 target there at Oakland. They need a wide receiver to step up. If that team wants to be competitive, they need Henry Ruggs.
Las Vegas now.
Edwards be viable. Oh, yes, Las Vegas. Yeah.
That team, you just got to say Raiders because you never know what city they're going to be in.
Yeah. For them to be competitive and viable, they need wide receivers to step up. But until then, it's just going to be Waller. And it doesn't matter. Even the defenses know that, and he still has kept it.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Carr is kind of one of the most criticized quarterbacks, I would say. He's one of the guys who has, top 5 talent, but doesn't necessarily get regarded as, even a top 10 quarterback by a lot of people. He knows how his bread gets buttered, and that's throwing the ball as many times as possible to Waller. Yeah. I actually have him as my number 2 tight end behind Kelsey. And I think Kelsey and Waller have separated themselves even from a guy like Kittle. To me, even though I'm a huge 49er fan, I think that these guys have just shown way more productivity, way more consistent, and are known for their passing. That's the reason why they're on the field is to catch balls. Whereas Kittle isn't the same way, in my opinion. He's obviously plays a big role in that in the running game for the Niners. So for me, Waller is the number 2. But if you could, I'm taking him. I would take Waller in my top 3. I think he's as productive as any receiver. As far as the amount of targets he's going to get 8 to 10 targets a game. He's going to be somebody who could get you 80 to 100 yards, and then you throw the touchdowns on top of that. This is a guy that could probably get you double-digit points in any format on a consistent week-to-week basis. He is somebody that I look to as a high-tier receiver, to be honest. So I would take him, in my top 3-4 rounds. Once you see Kelce go off the board, you better take Waller because somebody's going to grab him up pretty quickly after Kelce.
Sure.
So let's talk about Kittle, man. Kittle is one of the, obviously a lot of people took Kittle in the first or second round last season, and it just derailed them as far as, that ability. I'll let you talk about Kittle. I'm obviously tapped into the 49ers a lot more than probably you are at this point, but let's see what you think about Kittle and why you still think he's, the number 2 tight end on your draft board.
Yeah, well, I can't. I have been on that wagon for a long time.
Right.
He is my favorite tight end, and I think that he is the best tight end in the NFL.
Right.
Regardless. But again, we're talking fantasy, and you kind of brought it up. He's not scoring the fantasy points that those other two are scoring. At least he wasn't last year, and the injuries are really holding him back. But I love the way that the guy plays the position, and he does everything at an elite level. Even though he's there blocking, and they might be running the ball a lot more than what we want for fantasy football, he does that elite. He's not going to leave the field. He's a yak monster. So when he does catch the ball, anything is possible. He could blow up 3 guys, or he could hit the sideline and he could be gone. I also really like Trey Lance fitting in. I think that like many of these other quarterbacks that are going to sit on the bench for the first half of the season, or whatever you want to say, they're going to sit on the bench for 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 10 weeks. They're going to come in and they're going to get their shot. And these guys are all talented enough. Trey Lance apparently made some crazy throw this week in practice.
It's pretty amazing.
Apparently it looked just like all of the pro day throws where they are rolling out, play action rolling out to their left-hand side, resetting and throwing the ball to opposite field. I mean, I can envision that happening with him and Kittle already. So I'm going to hold true to Kittle, especially in redraft leagues. I like having him in my number 2 spot, but that's my ranking, and I like doing this outside of other people's rankings. In my home leagues, I was one of the first guys that started doing that, writing down my own ranking instead of just going off of other people's, because I have him at 2. This is my ranking at 2.
Yeah.
So that means when Kelce goes at 1, and Waller goes at 3, and somebody reaches for Kyle Pitts at 4, I get Kittle or Hawkins. I get my tier 1 tight end, and I'm going to get him in round 4 or 5 now, maybe 6, instead of paying up like I used to for Kittle. It's my ranking, and I like drafting using my rank, and I like playing using my rank because I want to find the advantages somewhere. And if I think I'm smart enough and I think I can do this well enough, that's where I'm going to find my advantages. So I'll let somebody draft those guys first. I'll pay a little bit lower draft capital, but I'm hoping for the same outcome.
So here's my thing about Kittle. I actually think if Trey Lance is the quarterback, because I believe Trey Lance starting week 1, just from everything that's coming out of training camp and the way that Shanahan has pretty much trashed Jimmy Garoppolo in every single press conference up until they traded for Trey Lance and they're trying to trade Jimmy G.
He seems to be wanting to play these mind games with everybody right now.
For sure, because they want to get something for a trade with Jimmy Garoppolo. But if Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter, I think Kittle is a number 2 for sure. If Trey Lance is the starter, I think George Kittle drops, because all of a sudden the receivers that 49ers have become viable options. And the year that Kittle had his breakout season, which was a few years ago, there wasn't very good receivers as far as bona fide number one options. And now the 49ers have two of them. Brandon Ayuk, I think, is a bona fide number one receiver. And Debo is another bona fide receiver that can, with the right quarterback, can play a receiver. With Jimmy Garoppolo, he's just a glorified running back because Jimmy Garoppolo can't throw the balls in the places that could make a receiver play receiver. So, so I think that if Trey Lance is deemed week one starter, I would stay away from Kittle. I think you're going to overpay for him. I think somebody's going to overpay for him. Not only does he have injury issues, but I don't think he's going to just get as many targets as he would in other years with the 49ers just because of the talent around him now. And so for me, I think Kittle would drop. I would be scared to take him just because he's going to go in the first probably top 3 rounds. And I'll let somebody else overpay, and I'll take a guy like Waller if he drops, or, drop down and pick in the 6th, 7th round a guy like Tonyan, a guy like Logan Thomas, who I think will, perform better.
Yep. I wouldn't argue that too much. I understand that mentality. I like him still that much, and I think that his yards after the catch, I think what he does when he finally gets the ball in his hands, I think that's going to negate some of the other,
And the thing about him,
he doesn't get the targets that he wants or that everybody wants him to get, but I think that he can make up for that in other ways. And I think he doesn't
get a lot of red zone targets. He doesn't get a lot of red zone targets, doesn't get a lot of touchdowns. So if he's not getting targets, not getting yards, not getting touchdowns, it's tough because he could be a really productive. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say that's also been in a system that hasn't had Trey Lance. And if we're moving to a system now that has Trey Lance, maybe there's going to be something different there that we don't know about.
I hope
Mike Shanahan was a lot of Mike Shanahan was part of Jordan Reed at Washington, and he was part of Tony Gonzalez down in Atlanta. So I don't think that Kittle should be. I don't think we don't have to forget about him completely. And in fact, again, I have him at 2 because that's my ranking. Right. I know other people already have him at 4 and 5. I think I saw one website that had him at like 18. Somebody was completely done with Kittle. Like, wow.
That's way too low. He's still.
I don't think I need to. Yeah, I won't be visiting them too much anymore. But,
he's still top 5 to me, but he is somebody that I think is boomer bust. Like he's one of those guys that you could take top, and maybe you're kicking yourself at the end of the season when you could have gotten one of the top receivers or top running backs.
We're here to win championships. You have to boom.
Yep.
So go boom.
Or you could bust.
You could bust. So you just grab him, and then you grab Jared Cook.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk. I mean, what did you say about Kelsey? Kelsey is bona fide number 1 in fantasy by far.
Yeah. He's number 1 regardless, and it's almost. I mean, it's a little bit of the Tyreek Hill situation too. He happens to be the best receiving tight end in the league, but he is also with the number 1 quarterback and the number 1 offense. That being said, I think that he has come back down a little bit. He didn't last year, obviously. There was still separation there. But I think that his numbers are going to start to fade. They're going to come back down to earth a little bit more. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire becomes much more involved in the passing game. I think a lot of that stuff gets smoothed out. We have to remember that these rookies didn't have rookie camps last year. They didn't have the meetings. They didn't have the ability to get in there and actually work with the team the way that they're typically doing and the way that they actually got to do this year. So I think that's going to help out a lot. And so there's going to be a new safety valve. There's going to be a new weapon for Patrick Mahomes to use. And I think he gets utilized a lot better than he did last year. And that running back catching balls out of the backfield just tends to cut into tight ends a lot of the time. It might not with Kansas City because they scheme the tight end in a different way. So he might be all right. But I think that regardless of what he has done or what he is going to do this year, I think we're looking at one of the last few rides for Travis Kelce. And not a complete fall off, but like 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
somebody just texted me some breaking news that Gerald McCoy just got traded to the Raiders.
Wow.
So how about that? Not a tight end, but We have some breaking news for you.
Breaking news. Hey, that's a big. New England's not playing around this season. And we're going to be talking about them very soon in our next topic. But I think Kelsey's bona fide best tight end. He's somebody that's worth a first-round pick in a 12-team league. I think he's going to get you, especially if you're that number 12 and he's there. I would take him back-to-back with top running back, top wide receiver. Yeah. You got to keep him on there because he's just consistently going to get you double-digit points. He's not somebody who's ever going to underperform his projection. He's, Patrick Mahomes' number one red zone target, especially with Watkins gone now. That's the receiver. That's the biggest receiver that they have there. Everybody else that they have at the receiving core is pretty much finesse guys. So when they're close, you're not throwing to a Tyreek Hill. You're not throwing to whoever else is going to be on the outside. You're really going to throw it to the big body, which is Kelsey, cutting across the middle or fading to the outside. So he's a simple pick. But let's talk about some guys who didn't make your list. So you mentioned a guy pretty a lot. So let's talk about him. Jared Cook. Yeah. Jared Cook is a premier tight end in his time. One of the best, pass catching, just overall tight ends. Obviously he's a little long in the tooth. However, he is going to be the number one tight end in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And they have, in my eyes, one of the most ascending quarterbacks there in Herbert, who loves to throw the ball a lot. I think he's somebody who could break people's top 12. I would put him over Gronk. I would put him over some of the guys that you put at 12 and 11 in your drafts, just because I think he's going to be utilized a lot. Something you were talking about why Keenan Allen dropped so much in your receiver draft is because you think that Herbert's going to spread the ball along. Well, if he is, Cook is going to be one of those guys that he's throwing to. So tell me where you would draft a guy like Cook and what you expect out of him this season. Let's talk about why he didn't make your list.
Sure. I think his age is pretty much the only reason that he didn't make my list. Jared Cook, even the year that he played with Green Bay, he still had a really viable fantasy season. I think he was a tight end one that year. We're just a couple of years removed from that, and so it kept him outside of my top 12. But I like him in Los Angeles a lot, and a lot of these things, maybe I'm ranking this more of how I would actually draft these guys, and I should do a little bit better than that. But I picture myself, we kind of just got done talking about the top 4 or 5. I picture Jared Cook as like the second tight end that I would draft. I would draft something like, I would try to look to get Hawkinson or Kittle and Jared Cook.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that would be my second tight end on my team. Because I think he has those weeks where he's going to put up some tight end one numbers. Now, whether or not you're going to play him on that week or not, he's your backup tight end.
Right.
And when you get outside of these top 12, it's really just kind of a crapshoot. There's only 4 or 5 guys that I really am seeking in redrafts. Otherwise, everybody else that I want at tight end position is just a young guy that, it's dynasty stuff that I think about. It's just a young guy that I think might be really talented. But Jared Cook he's got a high draft capital. He's one of those guys like Eric Ebron, Evan Engram, Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts. I believe Jared Cook was it was either him or Ebron that was the top 10 pick that went top 10 in their draft.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, he went to the Rams, right? He was drafted the Rams, the top 10.
Who's that?
Jared Cook.
Was he with the Rams, or did he go to the Saints?
The Colts.
I don't remember. I know he played for the Saints.
Maybe.
I don't know if he got drafted.
Yeah, he's played for all those teams now.
Yeah.
But a trusted veteran that you can bring in, and I think that the Chargers are going to spread the ball around a lot more. I think all of them have very viable fantasy seasons. Like, you're going to be able to start Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jared Cook, Austin Eckler. That's a team that I would look to stack up with. If you have Justin Herbert as your quarterback, grab any one of those guys and have them line up and run back.
I agree. So two of the probably tight end ones from last season landed on the same team this season. Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry are both on the Patriots. And Cam Newton is somebody who uses their tight ends a lot. He didn't have that many options to throw to last year when he was the starting quarterback for the Patriots. But him and Greg Olsen, when they were in Carolina, connected a lot. Jonnu was a tight end machine for the Titans. Hunter Henry has been really good tight end. You know, he's played for a couple of teams, or at least with the Chargers and maybe just the Chargers, but he, you know, was a tight end one when he was with them. They didn't make the list for you. So why are you shying away from the guys from in New England right now?
Yeah, I think that they're going to have two almost completely different roles, but I think they eat into productivity a little bit. I think that Bill Belichick probably saw Johnny Smith playing more of the H-back role in Tennessee like he did last year. He was more of that Aaron Hernandez role where he was kind of running motion, setting up in the backfield, and would either stay in the pass block and it was a lead blocker for Henry instead. And Belichick loved that when Aaron Hernandez was there, so he brought him in. I think that might have been the concession. I think the front office wanted to get Hunter Henry in there because they wanted a pass catcher for Cam Newton. He's like, he gets him, then I get Jonnu Smith. They just want them both in. So I don't think Jonnu is going to have as much of a fantasy productive season as we want him to have, but he's a huge upgrade for that team, and he's going to help them out a lot. He's going to make sure that the run game is working, and he's going to be a nice safety valve for Cam Newton. But Hunter Henry is going to be the one that's going to be schemed in. He's going to be part of the passing packages. I just think that team's going to run the ball a little bit more. I don't think they're not going to be throwing the ball all over the field. And when you have two tight ends there, and I could be wrong, maybe they're going to use these guys interchangeably, and I don't hate it. But when it comes to distributing the ball, like Cam Newton's not Tom Brady. Tom Brady was able to sustain Gronkowski and Hernandez at the same time. I don't think that Cam can do that. It's a different talent.
Okay. Somebody that I'm interested in hearing you talk about is we've been hearing, and I'm going to talk about two guys, and then you could kind of tell me why they didn't make your list. So two guys that we've been hearing kind of a lot about as far as potential. The guy, the tight end out of Buffalo, Knox, and then in your neck of the woods, the Bears, I think it's pronounced Kmet. He was supposed to be somebody that was supposed to break out last season. He didn't. I'm assuming Justin Fields is going to start week 1 with the Bears. And I always feel like with the rookie quarterback, the tight end is going to be that safety net a lot of times. So Kmet and Knox, why didn't they make their list, or do you expect anything out of them this season?
Yeah, I think Kmet is going to be a little bit slower role. He might take that third year to break out. He's got Jimmy Graham there, which is going to be a great mentor, and he started to come along a little bit last year. But if I remember right, like Kmet played baseball as well, so he was a multi-sport athlete, and transitioning to just one sport, making sure that this is his full-time job. That he's going to take. He's obviously going to take it seriously, but I think there's just going to be some finer things that need to be tuned up. Jimmy Graham is going to be great for that because they're both. Kmet is gigantic. He's just. I think he's an inch shorter than Jimmy Graham, but he's got him by 15 pounds already. Wow. And when they're walking side by side, like you can see the lower body strength that Kmet has. I'm excited about him too, but he's just the guy that I would. That you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer on. A lot of these tight ends don't break out in the first couple of years. Even Kittle and Kelsey and Zach Ertz. Not everybody does the Gronk thing. Not everybody does even the Evan Engram thing. His rookie season really was probably his best season so far. So giving Kmet another year or two would be fine. In redraft, you probably don't even have to worry about him that much unless he's blowing up. He might even be on the waiver wires.
Yeah.
You grab him then.
What about Knox?
And Knox, I love Dawson Knox, and I own him in like 4 dynasty leagues, and he's just on the bench. He's a taxi squad guy right now, all that stuff, and he's had a lot of injuries to deal with, and he's also I want to say he played quarterback in high school, then he got to Old Miss and he transitioned to tight end. But he played tight end at Old Miss with DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Elijah Moore. He
Right.
never caught a touchdown in college. So like he gets to the NFL, and this is the first time like he's actually going to be getting, he gets attention because everybody, it's college defensive backs and linebackers, and they're focusing on the best guys on the field, and he wasn't getting any of the attention, but he also wasn't getting the ball thrown to him either. But he's an athletic white guy that I just love. He gives me the Kittle and the Hawkinson and the Tanyan feel. Like he doesn't care if he's blocking, he doesn't care if he's catching a ball. But for fantasy, it's kind of not what you want. You want a
Right.
guy that just wants to go catch the ball, and he doesn't seem to care too much about that. He's just happy to be playing, and I'm happy for a guy like that too. And I'm gonna keep cheering him on. I'm not even gonna have him in my top 15 right now.
Wow. Because I
The
think,
guys that I'll just tell you really quick, the other guys that I have sitting outside the list were Jared Cook, Blake Jarwin, Tyler Higbee, and Max Williams. These are tight ends on prolific offenses that are going to score lots of fantasy points and NFL points, and they have got very competent quarterbacks that can distribute the ball. And so if you're outside of the top 12 and you just need more tight ends, Blake Jarwin, Tyler Higbee, Max Williams, Jared Cook, you're gonna spend pennies on these guys or get them on the waiver wire, and you're gonna be able to play them once or twice this season.
yeah, and that kind of brought me to my next two tight ends. You just talked about, I think, if you like a guy like Hawkinson, you got to like Tyler Higbee, right? Because he's going to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
Hawkinson's quarterback over there for the Rams. So he didn't make your list. He was decently productive with Goff as his quarterback. You would
Yep.
only expect him to be more productive now with Stafford there. Yet he didn't make your top 12. Why did you put him outside of your top 12?
I don't think he's as talented as Hawkinson. But athletically, I also think that I don't think Sean McVay really tries to run an offense that way, using a tight end in the passing game. Um, I think sometimes talent just is going to transcend somebody's position or somebody else's team. They also have uh, Cooper Cup and Robert Woods are still on the outside.
Right.
Um, with the Cam Akers injury, this might turn a little bit more into an air raid team again. And if that's the case, then Tyler Higbee, he's sitting on the outside. So I think that any of these guys you could flop in and out for Fant or Gasecki or Gronk. Um, these Gronk, Gasecki, and Fant are just the guys that I like and that I want to have them at that position. Um, Again, kind of for the draft purposes because I don't mind somebody. I would want somebody to take Tyler Higbee at tight end 11 or 12 so that I would get Fant or Gasecki to fall for me. I like that talent better.
Nice. And then we'll end the show on obligatory Dallas Cowboy talk. So Blake Jarwin is tight end one for Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, all signs are pointing to him being ready week one. Yet, obviously the Dallas Cowboys utilize their tight ends a lot. However, they do have, pretty elite receivers on both sides as well.
Yeah.
If it's like the Dallas Cowboys of the last however many years we've seen with Dak Prescott, they're going to throw the ball a lot. But Jarwin, you feel like still isn't a top 12 tight end. Why do you feel like he's not good enough to make that top 12?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's scary. It's scary even having him here because I believe it's an Achilles. He's coming off of an Achilles injury, and while that's for tight end, it's not going to be as difficult as it is some other positions. I mean, we're seeing it happen with some defensive positions and even wide receivers. And I mean, we're going to get a chance to look at it first thing this year with Marlon Mack, see if he can actually bounce back from Achilles tear, which kind of translates to the Cam Akers thing. You know, a lot of people are sitting on Cam Akers in dynasty leagues. They're not trading him yet because they specifically want to watch how Marlon Mack does. Because we haven't got to see a running back actually come back successfully, we haven't had one happen to a premier running back in the last few years. So it's just going to be interesting to see how far technology and how far they've advanced in being able to repair those for that position specifically. So Blake Jarwin sits outside of that just because that Achilles, we don't know how it's going to react. And to be honest, like if you just want to take Dalton Schultz instead of Blake Jarwin, I wouldn't blame you. I just want pieces of that Cowboys offense.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Casey, we made it through. You know, we were a little hesitant thinking that talking about tight ends wouldn't fill a full hour, and we're at an hour and 15 right now. So that's
we'll fill
great.
it every week, my friend.
I love it. So guys, that's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for the comments. Please go ahead and follow Casey on Twitter. He's posting football stuff all the time, along with a mix of culture, politics, all that kind of stuff. But really great follow in my books. Casey, we're going to do it again next week. We haven't decided if we're going to go running backs or quarterbacks, but it's going to probably be one of those two that we go with next. But thank you guys for tuning in. Casey, thank you for taking the time on vacation. Shows how dedicated this guy is to fantasy football, that he would take an hour out of his time away from his family to talk fantasy football with me. I appreciate you, Kelsey. Casey. I'm thinking tight end.
I'll take Kelsey. I'll take it all day. Yeah.
I love it.
And I tell you what, like if we could keep this thing going, we'll be down there talking fantasy football for the next 3 hours anyway. So it wasn't a break. They just got a break from me talking about it, but now I'm about to jump down there and see if I can make some dynasty trades happen.
I love it. Well, Casey, you go have a great night. Do that. Everybody else, be safe. Remember to keep it so real, and we'll see you next time. All right? Have a great night, guys.
Thanks, Neil.
Absolutely.